want Detroit sports talk done right? Yeah! If you want it, you got it. It's Detroit sports talk with attitude. It's the Knee Jerks with Eno and Big Al.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like at this time to introduce to you one of the finest running backs in the United States of America, and our number one pick, Barry Sanders.
Here's Isaiah. Let's see what we got. All the way up.
We might not be in your car or on your transistor radio, but we're bringing you the best of Detroit sports past, present, and future. It's time for the Knee Jerks with two guys who know Detroit sports. Here's Greg Eno and Al Beaton.
It's Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. It may be storming outside here in southeast Michigan tonight, but it's calm, smooth sailing here with the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk with Eno and Big Al. That's the best segue I could come up with since we've been off for a month, thanks to yours truly traveling. But anyway, I'm Al Beaton. I'm a longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, my co-host, co-creator, the man about town. He's quite the bon vivant, and that would be Greg Eno of the Out of Bounds blog. Greg, how's things?
Boy, a bon vivant.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I had to come up with something different. The man knows a lot of things about a lot of things. That's kind of stale at this point. I've used it for like 100 years.
I know. Well, that's like my calling card. I'm well.
Well, I just used it, so there you go.
I am well. Thanks for that. We've been listeners of the Knee Jerks have, if they've been wondering where the hell we've been, we've only done one show since late July because of vacations, and there was a power outage.
We had the power outage. Like I said, I was out of town. I was in Florida visiting my parents this past 2 weeks. So it's it's just that time of year, and we're old guys who have lives, unfortunately, for better or for worse, I guess. Sometimes the podcast has to take a back seat, but we're hitting fall and football season. And I think the off stretches will be fewer and further between. So, but anyway, Greg, how's things in your end of the world?
Things are going well. Thank you so much. We're happy to be back with you because there's so much that's going on right now in the world of Detroit sports, and so we're coming back to you, I think, just in time, in the nick of time. As when you do these podcasts every other week, it's kind of a crapshoot in terms of when news breaks versus when you can talk about it. And we got lucky in the sense that the Tigers hired the new president of baseball operations, Scott Harris. His introduction presser was today.
Yes.
So we're able to talk about that. We've got the Lions, of course, are opening their season. We've got a special guest tonight, Dave Mesrey of the Hamtramck Parks Conservancy and other places, who's going to talk to us about the second annual Ike Blessitt, who was on the show in May. Baseball Classic in Hamtramck on October the 2nd. Dave's got a bunch of stuff to talk about there. So we'll do that, and then our good friend Chris Creighton, Eastern Michigan, pulled off a stunning win over the weekend in Arizona State, and
the friends of the podcast are making noise. I'm telling you,
right? Absolutely. So lots to do, but before we do any of that, of course, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get a tummy ache and you moan and groan and woe, don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if Al can correctly guess that person within the first two clues, he'll receive the entire box set of Shogun. Remember Shogun?
Oh, my God. That's a deep cut. I'm thinking maybe Rich Man, Poor Man, or Roots maybe, but Shogun. Oh my goodness! How you must have a collection of TV guides a foot deep or something. My goodness! Was that Richard Chamberlain who started that as the white man who goes to feudal China, whatever? Japan, whatever the hell does.
I thought Richard Chamberlain was in Rich Man, Poor Man.
No, that was Nick Nolte. I remember he was in that.
Oh, okay.
Nick Nolte, I think Peter Strauss. Yeah, and the thing is, I know these things. It's terrifying me. But then again, when there was only 3 channels,
Right.
These things you just got sucked into this kind of stuff because that's all there was, So anyway, while I make shelf space for Shogun. Well, only if you can get the question.
Only if you can get this person out.
Yes, exactly.
He was born on this date in 1917. He passed away in 2006.
Okay, what did you say? What year? 1917?
17. Yes, and he passed away in 06.
Okay.
He made his name in the world of basketball. I will tell you that. Way more as a non-player. Although he did play, but his mark in the game is definitely as after he played. Let's put it that way. For one franchise, I will say that, and he is synonymous with winning. And I think I'll stop right there.
I'll just try Red Auerbach.
Yeah, you got Red Auerbach.
Yeah,
Red Auerbach.
I pretty much you pretty much the time frame. That's pretty much it right there. When he was born and all that. Yeah.
Arnold Red Auerbach, who had 938 wins. Yep. He won 9 championships as a coach.
And always seemed to have a cigar in his mouth.
Yeah, he had a bunch of championships, of course, as an executive with the Celtics, and he made news when he hired Bill Russell to coach the team as a black man.
Yep. Yeah, he was a player coach at the time too, wasn't he?
Right,
Russell?
exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Coach of the Year award is called the Red Auerbach Trophy, and so Red was born on this date 105 years ago. So good. Now you do have to make room for Shogun now.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, next I want to start working on the ABC movies of the week. Okay, so get going on those.
How about the after school specials?
Oh, the after school specials. Yeah, Schoolhouse Rock. Let's do them all. All right. With that, we have a lot to talk about. So, Greg, why don't you first off, before we even talk about, we have Tigers and Lions. We'll touch on Eastern Michigan. Why don't you introduce our guest?
Well, we talked with Dave Mesrey, a multiple guest here on the Knee Jerks, a friend of the Knee Jerks, although it's been a while. And Dave, for folks who may not know, is really very active in kind of the grassroots aspect of baseball in terms of helping to renovate old ballparks. And he gets his hands dirty and rolls up his sleeves.
Yeah, he was a big part of the Tiger Stadium, Save the Tiger Stadium area, even not so much a stadium, but preserve the corner, in other words, which they ultimately were able to do.
The Naven Field grounds crew, of course, and they helped renovate Michigan and Trumbull. So now he's moved on to Hamtramck, and with his good friend Ike Blessitt, and so we'll play that pre-recorded interview with him for you right now. Dave Mesrey is a friend of the Knee Jerks, and that is code for he's been a guest on the program before several times, as a matter of fact, but it's been a while. And so it's not only is it time now for Dave to be with us, but it's even more timely because Dave, who's done some work with the Naven Field grounds crew and has been a very big proponent of baseball in general in the Motor City and the surrounding areas, and big fan of the game, and a huge Mark Friedrich fan, by the way, Al. Just a huge Mark Friedrich fan.
Well, who isn't?
We could talk. Yeah, well, I mean, really.
Yeah, but exactly. Yeah, I know.
we could talk about that sometimes as well. But
the bird is still the word.
Yeah, that's right. Dave's going to help us talk about an event he's putting on or helping to put on. He's on the other end of our line right now. Dave Mesrey, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, what's going on, jerks? How you guys doing?
We are jerks, that's for sure.
Tell me something good.
Well, hey, you know what? I'll tell you something good. We had, thanks to Dave, I should say this, thanks to Dave's intervention now, we were able to talk to Ike Blessitt.
And that was a really fun interview we had of him.
And it proved to be a very popular episode. Folks really liked that. They liked Ike. They liked the interview. It was very, what you see is what you get with Ike, of course. And it was really, it was very candid. And the thing, Dave, I don't know if I told you, maybe I did on via chat, a text. I was so taken aback by how much Ike knew about his own numbers. He was reciting stats of from 1974 in some double A or whatever. And I looked it up on Baseball Reference, and he was dead on. This guy is like a photographic memory when it comes to he hit 22 home runs and had 72 RBI, and damned if he wasn't right.
And he probably didn't have his stats right in front of him.
I'm sure he didn't. I don't think he did at all.
I'm glad to hear that episode was popular. You know, people like Ike. We like Ike. We've actually, that's our little hashtag for this event. The event is the second annual Ike Blessitt Hamtramck Baseball Classic. That's Ike's hometown. Hometown boy made good. Made it to the major leagues. And so this is his, and of course we helped along with the Friends of Historic Hamtramck Stadium and lots of other partners. We've all worked together to restore the field and now the grandstand of historic Hamtramck Stadium, one of only 5 major Negro League ballparks still standing. And that's where Ike played his high school ball back in the 60s. That's where the scouts first discovered him. And, he made it to the, he's one of these cup of coffee guys, as they say. I'm sure your listeners know, for anyone who's just played a short while in the major leagues, they call them cup of coffee guys, right? They were only around long enough to have a cup of coffee. And Ike and I were joking that we should call this the Ike Blessitt Cup of Coffee Classic because we've got a lot of former ball players joining us. And it so happens that a lot of those guys are cup of coffee guys, too. For instance, Bruce Fields, former Tigers hitting coach, and former Tiger, Bruce Fields, along with his son Daniel, they're going to be on hand. They're both cup of coffee guys. They both only played a handful of games in the major leagues. I forget who else. I'd have to look. I don't have my list in front of me, but we were joking that we could call this the Cup of Coffee Classic. But you were saying when Ike was on your show before, it was a popular episode. He's we like Ike. That's our hashtag. We like Ike, and we even have some T-shirts with Ike's likeness on them. And they'll be on sale at the game. We like Ike benefit. This event is to benefit the Ike Blessitt Athletic Academy as well as the Hamtramck Parks Conservancy. And it's a grassroots ball game. There's going to be 2 ball games, back-to-back games of 7 innings apiece. A doubleheader at historic Hamtramck Stadium. It's at 3201 Dan Street on the south side of Hamtramck. And oh boy, it's going to be like a family-friendly grassroots event in an intimate ballpark, and we're gonna have all kinds of special guests. In fact, we've got along with the former Detroit Tigers father and son duo Bruce and Daniel Fields, cup of coffee guys. There's another cup of coffee guy from Walled Lake, Michigan, Dave Horton. He was a minor league pitcher for the Tigers, never made it to the bigs, but he'll be on hand as an honorary coach. Along with, now these guys weren't cup of coffee guys, I should mention, former 84 Tigers, 1984 world champs, Juan Berenguer and Barbaro Garbey. They'll be on
nice, very nice.
As honorary coaches. And we've got a DJ. Our DJ is going to be the godmother of house music, Stacy Hot Wax Hale, and another legendary DJ from Detroit. You know him from the Belleville 3, the techno legend Kevin Saunderson. He is not going to be spinning tunes. He's going to be lacing up his spikes and playing ball with us. Kevin is a heck of a ball player. Once hit a home run at Comerica Park before they brought the fences in. Wow. So if you have some techno music fans listening in, you'll have tunes from Stacy Hot Wax Hale, and you'll see the legend Kevin Saunderson himself playing ball out on the field in the Ike Blessitt Hamtramck Baseball Classic.
We're talking with Dave Mesrey here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from WordPress Out of Bounds blog, and Big Al Beaton is here with us as well. Before we bring Big Al in, let's just kind of take a step back, Dave, for folks who may not be familiar, or some of the listeners who may not be familiar. Talk a little bit about the Hamtramck Baseball Park and just the whole scene of baseball there in Hamtramck, and just fill us in about where this event's going to be held and a little bit of the history of the ballpark, if you would, please.
Sure thing. And I don't think I mentioned earlier. I'll mention it now, and I'll mention it again. The Ike Blessitt Hamtramck Baseball Classic, the second annual, will take place on Sunday, October the 2nd. Mark your calendars. That's Sunday, October 2nd at 1 o'clock at historic Hamtramck Stadium, located at 3201 Dan Street on the south side of Hamtramck in Veterans Park. And that's all in the footprint of the Hamtramck Parks Conservancy. The stadium itself, and some people are still a little confused about Hamtramck Stadium because it's a small town, right? It's only 2 square miles, but there are actually 2 stadiums in the city of Hamtramck. One is Keyworth Stadium, where the DCFC plays soccer,
Yeah.
And that's just a stone's throw away from Hamtramck Stadium, but they're two completely separate stadiums. Hamtramck Stadium is the historic home of the Negro National League Detroit Stars. This is where the Stars played in the early 1930s. Prior to that, they played on the east side of Detroit at Mack Park up until, I think it was from 1919 until 1929, and there was a fire at Mack Park in 29, and it destroyed part of the grandstand, not all of it, but enough so where the Stars needed a new home. And so in 1930, they built a new stadium in Hamtramck, and it opened in, I believe it was May of 1930, and none other than Tyrus Raymond Cobb came up. He took a train up from Georgia. He had just retired from baseball. Ty Cobb showed up at a Negro Leagues ballpark to throw out the ceremonial first pitch, and we even have pictures of it. So some of your listeners might be surprised to hear that Ty Cobb threw out the ceremonial first pitch at a Negro League ballpark, but it's true, and we have the photos to prove it.
Wow, that's I'm so glad you kind of got us up to speed about that, because a lot of folks know about the Detroit Stars only in the sense of having heard of them, of course, and also because the Tigers will always put on those Negro League Classic games where the Tigers wear the old Detroit Stars uniforms and so forth with the pinstripes and the red stars and so forth. But I don't know that a lot of people, Dave, know about where they played, about where the Stars actually played. I think a lot of people probably just assume wrongly, of course, that they played at the old Briggs Stadium, which of course they didn't do, or Navin Field back then.
No, of course not. In fact, Turkey Stearnes, the great Negro League ball player, the Hall of Famer who played much of his career in Detroit, he worked in the off season for Briggs Manufacturing, but he was not, because of the color of his skin, he was not allowed to play for Walter Briggs' Detroit Tigers. So he never got to play at Briggs Stadium, later renamed Tiger Stadium. But when he played for the Stars, he played most of his career with the Stars. He also played for the Kansas City Monarchs, the Chicago American Giants, and other teams. They played at Mack Park, I mentioned this earlier, which was on the city's east side. I'm an east side guy. I grew up in Morningside, and Mack Park was at Mack. And oh man, I forget the side street. I'm at just west of the Chrysler plant over there.
Okay.
I'm forgetting the cross streets, but there's nothing left of Mack Park. We hope to someday see a historical marker put up, but on the site is an apartment complex today. And as I mentioned earlier, that park was mostly destroyed in 1929. They continued playing there. The Stars moved, right? The Stars moved into Hamtramck starting in 1930, and that's where Turkey Stearnes. In fact, in 1930 they were in the Negro League World Series, if memory serves. I don't have my facts in front of me, but I think that went 7 games. They lost in 7 games to the St. Louis Stars that year. But yeah, that's where the Detroit Stars and later the Detroit Wolves played Negro League ball, major Negro League ball at Hamtramck Stadium, and a portion of that grandstand still stands today. Initially, it held around 8,000 or 9,000 people, and over the years it was scaled down, and of course it fell into disrepair. But last year the grandstand was the renovations were finally complete, and it holds about 2,000 people now. And the infield, thanks to my colleagues on the Hamtramck Stadium grounds crew and with support from the Friends of Historic Hamtramck Stadium and others, the infield is in fantastic shape. And the outfield is still a work in progress. We're still working to restore the outfield. And a little more history at Hamtramck Stadium. In the outfield, right in center field, is a Little League diamond that will soon be restored. We're hoping to have it restored in the spring. That Little League diamond was the home of the greatest Little Leaguer there ever was, Art Pinky Darris, the great Pinky Darris, who passed away just a few months ago. He and the 1959 Hamtramck Little League team, that was their home field, and they won the Little League World Series that year. So we're going to restore that field. It's a teamwork makes the dream work, right, fellas? So a bunch of groups are working to bring that together with support from General Motors and the Hamtramck Parks Conservancy, and that will be christened Pinky Darris Field. So there'll be Little League ball as well as hardball on the big diamond at historic Hamtramck Stadium.
As you were talking, I brought up newspapers.com, which is the best $19.99 I could ever spend every month because I love the archives. And I typed in Mack Park 1929, and I found an article from July 8th, 1929, about this horrific event that happened. And it says that the event that says that Mack Baseball Park was located at Fairview and Mack.
Fairview and Mack, that's exactly right. Fairview and Mack.
There's an
apartment complex there today.
When flames burst through the flooring at 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, a field receiving hospital emergency cots with 61 injured, 7 seriously. Some were trampled in the surge of the panic-stricken crowd toward the exit. So this happened when people were in attendance. This was there.
You know what happened? So what happened, if I'm not mistaken, there had been some rain and there was some standing water on the field, so the grounds crew poured gasoline on it in an attempt to evaporate. They didn't have a very good drainage system, apparently. And so I think the fire started as a result of the ground crew literally setting fire to the field to try to dry up the puddles, and it all went terribly wrong.
Yeah. Let's bring Big Al in, and what you got for Dave Mesrey.
Well, since this has a lot to do with Ike, how is Ike doing? And maybe you could let the listeners know a little bit more about his academy.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. You know, Ike had his health struggles over the years.
Exactly.
He like around the floor. He lost a leg. Ike had diabetes. He lost a leg. He's got a prosthetic leg. He's been in and out of the hospital. He's had some issues with his heart. He had a stent put in recently. He actually had a mini stroke recently while we were at Hamtramck. We were playing a game at Hamtramck Stadium. I play in the men's senior baseball league. By the way, a lot of the guys from my league will be playing in the Ike Blessitt Classic Sunday, October 2nd. And also remind me at the end, I'll mention to you, we're still looking for a few extra players. So if any of your listeners out there want to suit up and play ball for Ike Blessitt, along with Barbaro, Garbey, Juan, Berenguer, and everybody, we can still use a few extra players. But Ike's doing better. You know, I talk to him on a regular basis. He's doing better. He's excited about this event. And I should also mention, I mentioned we're going to have these great T-shirts designed by our friend, the great poster artist, the great artist Karen Cozy. She's made some great Ike Blessitt T-shirts. They're really cool. We like Ike. I can't wait for your listeners to see them. We're also going to have cars out there. We're for car fans and race fans. There's going to be a Red Tail Tuskegee Airman 2000 Mustang on display at the field, and we're going to have all kinds of cool stuff. And Ike's really excited about it. We're also going to have, I mentioned Turkey Stearnes earlier, the great Negro Leaguer Hall of Famer who played at Hamtramck Stadium for the Detroit Stars. He's originally from Nashville, Tennessee, but his daughters are still here in Michigan, and they're wonderful singers, Rosalind and Joyce, and they're going to be singing the national anthem before the Ike Blessitt.
Wow, this is really a really cool event with all of. I love how everything is weaving together. People's lives are weaving together. You've got relatives of people. You've got different people being honored. It's really a really fantastic thing that you're doing here. I'm going to get to the Hamtramck Stadium in a second, but before I do that, how can people, and especially people who may not be on Facebook, for example, who wouldn't have seen the event on Facebook, is there a way, Dave, for them to get involved in buying tickets and so forth?
Sure, yeah, they can go. The Facebook event page is public, so if you have the URL, anybody ought to be able to navigate there. It's if you just look up either the Hamtramck Parks Conservancy or the Hamtramck Stadium Grounds Crew, or you could just type in the Ike Blessitt Hamtramck Baseball Classic. There's a Facebook event page with all kinds of details there. And there's a link there to where you can purchase your tickets. But in case you can't get on Facebook for some reason, you can purchase your tickets from HamtramckParks.com. Go to the events tab. There's a little events tab there. And then scroll over to the October calendar. We're still in September. Autumn's closing in, fellas. Like Bob Seger used to say, autumn is closing in. But scroll over to the calendar of events, October 2022. Click on Hamtramck Stadium on the left, and there you'll see the Ike Blessitt Hamtramck Baseball Classic on October 2nd. You can purchase your tickets. They're just $12 in advance, or you can just purchase them for $12 at the door on the day of the event.
Yeah, and we'll have links to this in the show notes as well, so that won't be an issue there.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll send you guys some more info. But yeah, and in that same link at HamtramckParks.com, there's also link where you can register, where players can register as well. It's $26.50 per player, and we've got some really good, talented ball players playing, and we've got some maybe not so talented players playing, myself included. So we'll have a nice mix. Out there. It's a fun event. Nobody takes it too seriously.
Right.
It's a fun event. Ike is a really fun guy, and he loves to bust everybody's chops. Come on, Ike. We like Ike, and this is his hometown, and this is the ballpark where he grew up playing ball, and that's where the scouts discovered him. He played many, like I said, he only had a cup of coffee with the 72 Tigers, played for Billy Martin on that AL East champion team, and then he spent years in the minor leagues and years playing ball in Mexico. A hell of a ball player, great outfielder, but one of those cup of coffee guys, and he's there was a story in the Metro Times over the summer, a couple of them actually, about Ike, how he's one of, there's just a few hundred guys still living, former major league players who did not play long enough to qualify for a pension or health care benefits. And Ike is one of those guys. I think he was on the Tigers roster something like 36 days. And prior to 1980, I think you had to be on a roster 43 days to qualify. So Ike doesn't get a pension, he doesn't get health care benefits, and he's got a lot of brethren out there who are cup of coffee guys who are just shy of qualifying for a pension. I have to tell you, you guys know I'm a freelance writer like you, and I have a story I'm working on that I hope to get out there sometime during the playoffs. There's a fellow, one of Ike's brethren, I'm just going to tease it right now, but there's a guy, another cup of coffee guy, who played around 40 years ago. He was on the Major League roster for 42 games, 42 days, I believe, which leaves him just one day shy of qualifying for a pension and health care benefits. And that season that he was on the Major League roster, his team was rained out once, and they never made that game up. And so I'm working on a story about him. Stay tuned. Maybe I'll come back and we'll talk about it when the story comes out.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it would be great. But before I let you go, Dave, you mentioned something kind of almost in passing a little while ago. You said we hope to get you were talking about the Hamtramck Stadium and hoping to get some renovations completed in the spring. And I was just curious if anybody was interested in helping you guys, physically helping you. I presume you'll never turn anybody away, of course. But is there a way anybody, if anybody wants to help you, roll up their sleeves, get out there and help you physically work on stuff out there at that ballpark? Is there a way for them to do that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We could always use a helping hand. I worked a long time on the grounds crew, both at the old Tiger Stadium site and at Hamtramck Stadium. But I've got a day job now. They kind of kick me upstairs. I don't do much groundskeeping anymore. I'm just doing a little social media and promoting these events. But folks can reach out to us through the Hamtramck Stadium Grounds Crew Facebook page, or reach out to the Hamtramck Parks Conservancy at hamtramckparks.com, and let us know you'd like to volunteer. We could always use a little help picking up garbage around the ballpark, cutting the grass, sweeping the infield dirt, whatever you can do. It's a volunteer effort, and we really appreciate the help.
Absolutely. Okay, good. And like Al said, we'll put the links in the show notes and get everybody over there that way. I just sent out a tweet about it with the link to the Hamtramck link that you provided, and so we'll help you get some folks out there. And David, thanks for being here and doing this, and God bless you, my friend. Thanks for everything you do.
Thanks, fellas. Take care.
Boy, is there a bigger cheerleader for Detroit Hamtramck and things than Dave. He is that man bleeds Detroit. He really does.
Yeah. He's an East Sider, and he's been around the area his entire life. And he's really and the stuff he does, he makes very little money, if any, on this stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. This is labor of love for him.
Right, exactly. So good to talk to Dave, and we appreciate him being here. So hope everybody enjoyed that interview. But Al, we've got speaking of Friends of the Knee Jerks.
Yes, we need to start before we even get into the Tigers front office shenanigans and how the Lions are doing. Another friend of the show made big news this weekend, and that would be head coach of Eastern Michigan University, the Eagles, or as Greg still likes to call them, the Hurons. That would be Chris Creighton, who has been on the show several times talking about his teams. And he had a huge victory this weekend. Unfortunately, it happened in the middle of the night, because it was out in as he played Arizona State. But the Eagles knocked off a Power 5 team. They defeated ASU 30-21. Eastern became the first MAC team to beat a Pac-12 team in the regular season, let alone to do it on the road, in a hostile environment. And so that raises Eastern's record to 2-1. And what was even more interesting is that the fallout of his victory, the following afternoon, ASU fired head coach Herm Edwards. He got the ziggy. He got the Scott Frost, as they say. And apparently this was the final straw for Edwards, as Edwards has the Sun Devils being investigated for violations by the NCAA. And there's an interesting article in The Athletic, I think came out today, about what's essentially Herm Edwards, an NFL guy who came into the college ranks and didn't bother to learn the college rules, came back to bite him in the ass. And then you got a lifer like Chris Creighton, who's worked his ass off to make what was a horrible, horrible bottom-of-the-barrel Group of 5 program into a very extremely respectable, team that could probably challenge for MAC titles at this point. So congratulations to Chris. And Greg, you being an alum, what's your thoughts on all this?
Well, I wrote a piece about it, and the reason I was motivated to write about it wasn't just that they won, which of course was, and you're right about middle of the night. The game didn't start until 11 o'clock local time.
And it was on the Pac-12 network, for Christ's sake.
Right. It was hard for, like you said, harder for people around here to watch it. I followed along on Twitter on it, and Google, and was checking in on it, and the score kept, being in the Eastern's favor, and I kept, are they going to pull this off? And
that's the thing. It wasn't like a fluke win. They dominated the game.
Yeah. And they ran the ball right down the Sun Devils' throats, and so it wasn't just though that they won. The reason why I wrote the piece is because and it wasn't even because Herm Edwards got fired, but the local, when I say local, the Arizona media called the loss embarrassing, and I guess I took a little bit of offense to that, and I understand. I know that they were a 20-point favorite, the Sun Devils.
It's not an embarrassment to lose to a damn MAC team. It shouldn't be.
Well, no, and I know they were 20-point favorites. I get it, and they're playing at home, and Edwards has been maligned, and he definitely was on thin ice. But I can see why that would have been a game. And Eastern was coming off a 49-21 loss in Louisiana, so I understand why it would be a shocker to lose that game. However, like you said, it's not embarrassing to lose to these teams. I mean, you got to play. I remember Chris was on one of the many times he was on the show. It might have been the last time. He was on. He said, "Look," he said, "you can't." He said, You have to play these games out. You can't you have to perform for 60 minutes or else you're going to get beat. He says, he was talking about the MAC. He was talking about, I think you would ask him a question about, winning in the MAC and how tough it is. And he said, look, every week you got to completely play up. You have to bring your A game, because these teams in the MAC, it doesn't matter where the game's played, your own building, on the road, they will beat you if you're not up to snuff. And so I think that holds true for a lot of matchups throughout the country. Yes, Arizona.
Well, yeah, look at what the Sun Belt Conference, a.k.a. the Fun Belt, has done this year. And the MAC has won some big games. It's these games aren't gimmies for the most part. I wouldn't call them gimmies. I mean, teams like Arizona State should be able to out-talent them. But, as we've seen time and time again, and we've seen this several times this year already, oftentimes it's not about the talent. The talent is even enough to where you get a couple breaks and you make some smart coaching decisions, and we have a result like Chris Creighton beating Herm Edwards, an NFL head coach, former NFL head coach. And, and it's worth noting Chris Creighton probably deserves a bigger stage at this point, even though he's done. Yeah. I'm sure you would hate to see him leave.
Right.
He really deserves a bigger stage at this point, showing what he's done at Eastern.
Yeah, we keep talking about that, and I'm sure one day it's probably going to happen. We keep asking him about that, and he keeps demurring. But yeah, I mean that's true. But the thing too, Al, is that they do this at least once a year. Eastern, they beat a team like that. They've several years in a row. They will win these games on the road. Yeah. Whether it's Rutgers or there's a bunch of other examples.
Where
they've gone on the road. And they've beaten teams that they really, wow, that's interesting. And now the one thing that he has not done, Creighton has not done, of course, is win a bowl game. He's 0-4, and there's been he was joking with me earlier in the year. He said, geez, the last two bowl games we played, the opposing quarterbacks were Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
Now I said in my column, I said, well, that just goes to show you the competition level at which the Eagles play now. I mean, these aren't rinky-dink opponents. They're playing in these rinky-dink bowls anymore.
Right.
Malik Willis, and Kenny Pickett speak for themselves. So I'm sure that one of these days they'll knock that door down and win a bowl game. You mentioned MAC titles. That's I'm sure in the mix. But I just feel really good about the program. It was a big win. You mentioned first MAC win over a Pac-12 school ever.
Yep.
I said in my piece it's probably the biggest win the program has had since the California Bowl win in 1987 when they beat San Jose State under Jim Harcum and Ronnie Adams, and that's 35 years ago now, believe it or not.
Yeah, and the trials and tribulations that program has seen, and now it's on safe footing thanks to Coach Creighton.
So we'll get Chris back on the show in a little while. Talk about.
I'm sure it'll be after the season, and we'll be able to talk a little bit about it. I'm looking for, because he's always fun to talk to. He really is.
Right. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, big win for them. But as far as the Herm Edwards thing goes, now Edwards, as you know, was out of coaching for about 10 years when Arizona State.
Yeah, he was an ESPN talking head at that point.
Yeah, right. And he had not coached at any level for about 10 years, much less the college level. And so the whole thing was kind of considered an experiment.
Yeah.
He had a few wins over top 25 teams, but for the most part, he was a disappointment. And you mentioned the alleged a
lot of it happened during the COVID pandemic era with the lockdowns. Right. And where he was contacting people when he shouldn't have been. And according to the Athletic article, he never bothered to learn the majority of the recruiting rules that he was supposed to be abiding by, and it's come back to bite him in the ass.
Yeah, so he's 68 now, and probably won't be coaching anymore. But I'm curious as to why what played more into this decision. Was it just the loss to Eastern, or was it that in combination with the black cloud of these allegations?
Well, I'm referring back to the Athletic article.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's been a lot of infighting in that there was rumors that there were people in the program were leaking information to other teams because they wanted to get Herm Edwards fired, much like what happened to Wake Forest several years ago. Or just recently where I believe a radio color guy was doing the same for a team where he wanted that coach fired recently. So the program essentially, he was in many ways a figurehead type coach. He was there to coach, and he didn't do a lot of the administrative type stuff. And it's all come back to kind of bite him because there was stuff going on under him that he either had no clue about or didn't care to learn about. And obviously being the head of the program, even if he didn't have all the responsibilities thereof, he was the one who was going to get caught up in it. Yeah, from all accounts, it sounds like Arizona State is an absolute mess right now when it comes to their football program. And essentially, Chris Creighton just brought it all to a head.
Right, and this game, I guess, in a way, then just is kind of like a microcosm of where those two programs are headed.
Exactly.
Eastern's got the hope and the riding high with this rejuvenation of their program.
Yep.
And Arizona State is kind of wobbling around now, and so
we'll conference see. That may not even be around in 2 years.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So yeah, it's Or they'll be playing. They could be a group of 5 team in a couple years, the way things are heading. So, it's. I would just say this, Greg. It's good to be an Eagle or Huron. Which term do you prefer, anyway?
Oh, Huron by far.
That's what I thought. Yes. Yeah. I don't want to insult you by calling you an Eagle. So.
No, please.
But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to talk to Chris after the end of the season, because I know he's got his hands full right now. So. But I just wanted to bring that up because obviously we have a lot of other things to talk about, and I didn't want that to get lost in the shuffle. So we decided let's lead with another friend of the show making news. So congratulations to Chris Creighton. Yeah. All right, Greg. Big news in Detroit this week, and we're not just talking about the Lions, who are making a lot of noise, but the Tigers. This came out of the blue. I mean, I got a ding on my phone. I looked. I go, what? And the Tigers hired a new president of baseball operations. News broke yesterday. Press conference was earlier this afternoon. And this had to be one of the quietest and leak-free hiring processes in memory. I mean, Chris Ilitch must have played it super close to the vest, because oftentimes you'll hear through the usual baseball talking heads, the Passans and of the world, the Kirkjans, those guys. They'll send out tweets. Well, so and so is interviewed for the job, or rumors are so and so is in the running. There was none of that when it came. There were a few articles, the usual ones you see, where they just list the most supposedly the most in-demand kind of guys for these jobs. And for most of these, Scott Harris, who got the job, who has been with the Giants for the past couple of years, was never even mentioned. I think maybe because many people thought he wasn't even going to be available. But apparently he was. But I'm still impressed that nothing got leaked out about this. But Chris Ilitch he tabbed San Francisco Giants general manager Scott Harris as his new president of baseball operations. And this is 5 weeks after hiring Al Avila, however you want to pronounce it. And I was anticipating this, Greg, happening after the season. But yeah, this works out great, because now he can start doing a little bit of evaluation of what he wants to do with this team. We still have a couple weeks left in the year in the baseball season. So first off, the timing's great. But Harris is 35 years old, spent the last 3 seasons as the second in command to Giants president of baseball operations, Farhan Zadi. Harris also has close ties to Theo Epstein, as before he joined the Giants, he spent 8 years with the Cubs as one of Epstein's lieutenants. He rose from director of baseball operations to assistant general manager. This guy has quite the resume for someone only 35 years old. I'm saying that right now. Apparently, he's been considered an up-and-comer. He has a background in scouting, player development, and analytics, importantly. And supposedly, he turned down an opportunity with the Mets last year to become their GM, which is a big surprise. Mm-hmm. A lot of this, I think, has to do with San Francisco, where he was working, is his hometown. But the guy in front of him, the president of baseball operations there, is only 10 years older and not going anywhere, because the Giants have had a fairly successful run. So if Harris was going to move up into a position of power with the team, he was going to have to leave the Giants. And luckily, hopefully, I should say, the Tigers are going to be the beneficiary of that. A couple other things interesting about this. We'll talk a little bit about the presser as well. Is Harris has no ties to anyone that's left in the current Tigers regime. In other words, he's not has anything to do with A.J. Hinch or any of the Dodgers crew that got brought in over the past couple years. And I think what a lot of people were afraid of, that there would be either an inside hire or someone who would defer to A.J. Hinch. And that was always going to be the fear. And I think that there's one thing this franchise needed, Greg, is a guy from the outside who could come in and actually come in with a fresh set of ideas, fresh set of eyes, and make some changes that this team is long overdue to have done. So yeah, this is long overdue that the Tigers bring in someone from the outside rather than an inside hire. Because essentially, Greg, they've had the same lineage for the most part, going back to Dave Dombrowski back in the early 2000s through Al Avila, who was his right hand man for years. And the Littlefields and the Chads and all those guys, they've been around forever. This is about time the Tigers, there we go again. The Tigers brought in someone who isn't from that lineage, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, this is really, I have to admit, I'm very impressed that this hire was made. You talked about the being close to the vest thing. That was impressive.
Yeah.
I had written a column on July 25th that basically said that the Tigers need to hire a team president and a general manager, and it looks like they're actually going to take my advice.
Yes.
They're going to They hired Harris. Harris apparently is going to be empowered to hire his own general manager. It was interesting because Chris Ilitch said that Steve Yzerman was involved in this to a degree. Now, I don't know to what degree he was. I know that Jimmy Devellano serves, which a lot of people may not even know. Jimmy Devellano serves in the Tigers front office as well as the Red Wings front office. Some people don't know that. But Yzerman, I'm not sure what the involvement was, although he does know Harris apparently, and they do know each other a little bit. And from his days with the Cubs, Harris's days with the Cubs. So interesting. That was interesting. The other thing is that I wonder, Al, if some of this has. I gotta think some of this has to do with A.J. Hinch in the sense that because Hinch was involved, of course, in the process, and he knew a few weeks ago. They said as early as a few weeks ago that they're heading toward the Harris direction, and he, of course, couldn't say anything until it was official. But I have a feeling that why you got to give credit to Chris Ilitch because he ultimately was the guy who made the hire. You do have to acknowledge that there were other people involved, thank goodness, who maybe helped steer him in the Harris direction. And Harris obviously saw something in Detroit that he liked beyond just the promotion. Because, with San Francisco, he was the GM. And in these days, with the successful business models, teams that just have GMs like the old days aren't really – that's not really the way you go now. The way you go now is to have team presidents or directors of baseball operations, whatever the titles may be, and you have GMs.
Right.
It's kind of that's the way it's too big now. The job is too big for one person. Somebody was asking me on Twitter, well, gee, is this just semantics? I mean, why are we doing I said, no. You have what's probably going to happen is you're going to have a general manager, because somebody asked me, well, what's the difference between a president and a general manager? And so, well, in this case, I'm guessing what's going to happen is the general manager will be largely responsible for the 40-man major league roster in terms of acquisitions, trades, that who to call up and who not to call up and so forth, while the president will now be more in charge of drafting, scouting, contract negotiations, player development, player wellness, minor leagues. All that purview goes underneath. And of course, he's going to have his own assistants as well. But it's too much for one man. And
these are billion-dollar organizations.
Tigers didn't have that. They did not have that structure.
No.
And so
very old school that way.
I hope to goodness that when they do this, that they don't just bring in another single individual, that they need to have to have a tier, and the first tier is the president who's going to report to the owner, and then the second tier is the GM who will report to the president. And I'm glad to see them going in that direction. Harris says he will absolutely not be the GM. He's going to hire somebody else. Chris Ilitch says Harris has got full carte blanche to hire whoever he wants, which is the way it should be. And so far so good. I mean, this is almost so out of character for Chris Ilitch that I just can't help but think that other people got in his ear, i.e. Hinch and maybe Yzerman and whoever else, to put him in this direction, because this is. You mentioned Harris being young, and people are going to get the heebie-jeebies and say, well, gee,
Randy Smith.
Randy Smith was young at one point. But this Harris Smith has nowhere near the qualifications that Harris has. Harris's resume is way more impressive at this juncture than Smith's was, of course. And that was 25 years ago. But this is a real, and the people outside of the Tigers organization, Al, are really high on this. They're really damning the team with praise. Jed Hoyer, his old boss at the Cubs, Harris's old boss at the Cubs, he said, look, and we knew we were going to lose him at some point, and we did. We lost him to the Giants, and I'm sure the Giants knew that they were going to lose him at some point. And now the Tigers though, have this 35-year-old guy who's got this title, which really you can't. If he was going to make a move, if he's going to leave the Tigers down the line, I don't know what he would do. It would be a lateral move. He's got all of the control right now they could ever want.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Ilitch says, I think he's ready to do this, and I'm sure he is ready. And so this is a guy, Al, that could, theoretically, could be running the show here if it goes well.
For a long time.
15 years.
Yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, there's really no, the sky's the limit with this guy in terms of how far they go, based on his lineage and what he's done so far and the experience he's been able to and all the winning he's done with the Cubs and with the Giants.
Yeah.
And even to a degree, don't forget he worked for the Padres for a while.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal for sure.
Yeah, it's also worth noting when people worry about the youth. Well, with Dave Dombrowski got his first position of power when he was the Marlins, mid-30s. Theo Epstein was probably in his early 30s. There's a lot of well-known baseball executives who were hitting their stride where they really got their first job where they could run a team in their mid-30s. That's just how the job is anymore. In a lot of ways, a guy like, how the Tigers have been run for several decades is kind of the old and out of date at this point. Is the old and busted,
Right.
Even because as good of a GM as Dave Dombrowski was for them, he was not analytically minded.
Right.
Al Avila, same way, even though he supposedly implemented analytics into the front office, it's pretty obvious that there's some sort of disconnect between gathering the analytical information and then implementing the analytical information. And that's been an issue. And that's why bringing in a guy who was essentially been brought up in baseball, you grew up, when you come up as an executive under Theo Epstein, I mean, you're going to be immersed in the advanced metrics of baseball. And I do like some of the things he did say. Like one of the quotes I really liked was, we have to take calculated risk in this organization to narrow the gap between us and other organizations we're chasing right now. And that is a breath of fresh air coming from this team being run for the past several years with a very risk-averse general manager. It makes you wonder where this team would stand now if they sold high on a few players that ultimately either flamed out or just didn't turn out to be good, Fulmer, Boyd, whomever, guys like that. I mean, there was people for years. This team is not going to win for a few years. You don't need to keep Michael Fulmer. And then he gets hurt, and then he becomes a relief pitcher, and he's traded for a double or single A prospect who's not really on anybody's radar, for example. So that's something I think a lot of fans would like to see this team do, is become more aggressive in gathering players. Because a lot of times you'll see with these organizations that win, like the Dodgers. I know we've brought this name up before. Max Muncy, guy who was picked off the scrap heap and became an everyday player for them, an impact 3-WAR kind of player for them. When's the last time, other than J.D. Martinez, can you think of very many guys the Tigers have picked up and actually became impact players? Usually these guys, we saw too much of this with Al Avila. I'm going to sign these guys for 1 year. And, and then they really not much ever becomes of those guys. I think the only guy that ever really worked out like that was Mike Fierce. And they traded him and got next to nothing for him anyway. So I want a young, aggressive GM that's not afraid to take risks. And sometimes it's going to blow up. But what's the old quote? You don't score 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right.
Michael Gretzky, or Michael Gretzky, what's it? Wayne Gretzky, or the Office thing, whatever. Regardless of all that, I want to see a GM who's willing to take some shots. And the Tigers have not been willing to take any kind of shots since Dave Dombrowski left. And that's been almost 10 years at this point since Dombrowski was in his prime here.
Yeah, well, it's funny, but when you mentioned Dombrowski, I should say, when you mentioned Dombrowski, I think he got his start with the White Sox under Roland Heeman when he was in his 20s.
Yeah.
That's where he first met Jim Leland, by the way, when Leland was a coach under Tony La Russa,
right.
and Dombrowski was like I'm not sure what his title was with the White Sox, but then you mentioned, and of course, like you said, he went to Florida and so forth. But yeah, I mean, it's really surprising. I mean, not that I didn't think they were going to get. I was pretty sure they were going to get somebody who I think most of the fans were going to be on board with. But
right.
I'm with you on I think what the thing that's kind of got me kind of befuddled in a good way is how they were able to keep this so quiet, like you said.
Yes.
And all of a sudden it just kind of broke. I saw Jeff Passan was the one I saw break it on Twitter. Yeah. Who usually does break stuff, and then all of a sudden, then the cat was out of the bag, and they had statements released by the team and by Harris, and there was no there wasn't anything like, well, I can't confirm it. They just the cat was out of the bag. But before that, there was no indication that Harris was even in the mix, let alone was going to be the guy that they picked up. Folks may wonder, Al, they said, well, gee whiz, why would he leave? Why would Harris leave the Giants? Which now, granted, the Giants have had a very disappointing year. Following their 107 win season. Which, by the way, though, the 107 win season was to me an outlier, but whatever. Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, is that I think he's maybe just kind of tired. I know he's only 35, but kind of tired of maybe being that number 2, that lieutenant. Top lieutenant, right? Whether it was in San Francisco or in Chicago, and even though he's 35, he's got all this, still has all these years of experience, and I think he's just ready now. You mentioned San Francisco being his hometown, but he's ready to, be the guy now, and now he looks at the Tigers, and I'm sure he sees a sleeping giant. With this franchise, he sees the division, which is, not going to.
That I think plays a lot into it, because the San Francisco is always going to be battling with the Dodgers and their $300 million payrolls.
Right. Yeah. And the Tigers.
I think that plays a lot into it right there.
Right, and he's able to maybe work for ownership that can be the big spenders of the division.
Yeah, definitely there.
And that's really all you need to do is just win your division and then see what happens in October. But I think that's between the division being weak, his restlessness, and the fact that he sees a sleeping giant here in terms of he was around when the Tigers were drawing 40,000 a night.
Yeah, get $3 million a year coming to Comerica Park.
Sure,
exactly.
Absolutely, and that was that was big doings here. I mean, the baseball seasons here were absolutely electric.
Baseball was king for that 2006 to 2014. Baseball was king here. It really was.
Right.
But I think a sleeping giant is a good way to put it. It's and we said this before about the Tigers. And anyways, this is an underachieving franchise for, I think, most of its. And we talked about this last time we talked. This has been an underachieving franchise for the vast majority of its lifespan. Now, other than for brief stretches of competence for championship, for the most part, this has been a franchise for being a charter member of the American League. It should have had more success, but for whatever reason, be it the ownership, be it the people that are put in charge or whatever, is that it's never been a consistent top of the league type of franchise. Never has. Other than and honestly, that the Dombrowski era is overall probably the best stretch of baseball this franchise has ever seen in history, when they were competitive essentially for a decade straight for the most part.
But you know what?
And that's rarely happened with this team. Which the capability is here. I think that's how you put it. The capability is here, and if the owner is willing to spend, and hopefully Ilitch has been embarrassed enough that he can, in what's a weak division, this is a great opportunity for a young up and comer. You're right about that.
Yeah, but back to your point about the Dombrowski era and the Leland era and that stretch of baseball. And yeah, it was exciting. There were World Series appearances. There were divisions that were won. There were big wins over the Yankees in the playoffs, and there was a lot of stuff that was absolutely no question about it. But even then, when you look back at those teams,
they underachieved.
well, there's that, but they were. I would still say to you that even then, the Tigers were not a model franchise. They were just. They happened to have a guy, Dombrowski, who was able to massage the roster without any sort of player development whatsoever.
Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah.
It's amazing when you think about it that you can get away with that like the Tigers did again in a weak division. That division's been weak since almost from the get-go. Yeah. And so you can win the division, but they did it with almost like with smoke and mirrors because they would bring in guys and guys would have big years. They would
or he'd bring in undervalued guys, the Guillens and the Polacos and the Fisters.
Right.
And that's what I would love to see a new general manager do. Al Avila couldn't do it. He would find undervalued guys, and they would remain undervalued.
Right.
When Dombrowski did it, he found guys who ultimately had all-star talent. And that's the kind of GM the Tigers need now.
But
in today's game especially.
But meanwhile, back at the ranch,
the farm system was flailing about.
There was no player development. There was no young studs coming through the city. I remember you and I have done this program for 13 years, and I remember even when they were winning divisions, we were saying, you know what? Sooner or later, the other shoe's going to drop here.
Oh, yeah.
We saw this coming a mile away. So you're not going to win the division forever, number one. Number two, these guys are getting older.
And the payroll wasn't going to stay at $200 million.
Right. The Ordonez's of the world, the Guillens of the world, the Victor Martinez's of the world. Sooner or later, that well's going to run dry. And we kept saying, don't be like the Phillies. We used the Phillies as our example.
Yep.
Don't be like the Phillies. We went to World Series a couple of years, and then just after Ryan Howard got old and everybody got old, and nobody came in to fill the gap.
Yeah.
And so I would even say that during those years when Dombrowski was here, it wasn't. I'm not trying to take anything away from him because he was for what he did.
Yeah,
he was a good GM for what he did.
Yeah,
but the organization was not a model. Nobody held the Tigers up and said that's who we want to be.
Yeah,
they were holding up other franchises, and even though the Tigers were winning divisions. It was almost like don't look behind the curtain because you don't want to see what's going on back there because there's nothing going on back there because once this runs out, guys, we're done. And that's exactly
it was like $1 million house on a cinder block foundation.
Right. And that's exactly that's a good way to put it. And that's exactly what happened. So you had to trade Verlander and trade Martinez and trade this and that, and then one last gasp when they signed Zimmerman and Upton, and it just and now here we are, 6 years later now, and still nowhere near winning. Now Harris says that he didn't really come out and say it plainly, but he seems to think that he can get this thing turned around in a relatively quick time frame. And you mentioned the risks and so forth, but at the time.
Here's the quote he used. His quote was, "I don't believe in strict 5-year plans if a specific benchmark. Well, I don't believe in strict 5-year plans with specific benchmarks year over year. There are too many variables year to year."
Right.
That sounds like a man who is not planning on a long, drawn out rebuild right there. Yeah.
Right.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw it in.
No, that's fine. Yeah. You're right. But I'm just saying that this is someone who I think that he thinks that this is something that it's doable. I still think it's a 3 to 5 year thing in terms of getting them to the point where they're going to be one of the better teams in baseball. But this isn't, Al. This isn't just that's what's so nice about this hire. It's not just about, let's just return to prominence. Let's just start winning again for a few years. No, this hire to me means we're serious about indeed becoming a model franchise in baseball. Yeah. We're not content to just let's try to eke into the playoffs. Let's try to massage this into an 85-90 win team and see what happens. This is actually now an indication to me that the Tigers want to be a model franchise. And I don't know that we can ever have really said that about this team in even those Leland years, because I think the Leland years were I think they were just fool's gold. I mean, now they did get to 2 World Series, so that's fine. But what I'm saying is the way that team was constructed versus the way that you really should build your team is it's not sustainable. And that's the word, sustainable. And I think with Harris, I think he plans on building something sustainable, and that he wants the Tigers to be good every year, not just for a few years and not just peaks and valleys, but he wants this to be, the model franchise, at least for a mid-market team in baseball. And that's why I think he's coming here.
Yeah, it's the tools are here. It just need to be implemented in the correct way. I think that's the best way to put it. But it's I did find there was a couple other interesting quotes. Was one when he was asked about the state of the farm system, which is kind of relevant to what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And I like what he said. I'm not sure it's a good idea to share the Giants' perspective of the Tigers' farm system. I have a feeling it would have been bad.
Yeah.
Which why he didn't want to say anything.
Right.
And also he was asked about the status of what to do about the Miguel Cabrera situation. And he said, I'd have to sit down with Miguel and talk to him. So that was a nice way of just dancing around the question. That's exactly what he's going to have to do, and then they'll have to figure something out. Even if we've talked about Cabrera to the point where we've lost our breath about it. So overall, though, once again, Greg, we watched someone win the press conference, and even better, Chris Ilitch didn't put his foot in his mouth this time, unlike the last couple times he's been out in public. So
right.
So I guess it was a good day to be a Tigers fan when you had looks like, at least for now, a well thought of hire and the owner not saying anything dumb. I think that's a good day in Tigerdom, to say the very least.
I agree.
All right. There was one thing I wanted to ask you that I forgot to put in the show notes. There's rumors that the Tigers are going to move the fences in again, specifically center field. Since the 420 to center is the deepest in all of Major League Baseball. And what are your thoughts on the Tigers bringing in the fences? This is like, if you spend any time like following Lynn Henning on Twitter, that has been his pet peeve for 20 years. That Comerica Park is just too deep, too big of a stadium for the way the game is played today. And especially when it was first built, it was absolutely ridiculous. When you had a 395 power alley, the stadium, as nice as Comerica was, it was screwed up when they built it, and that was one of the big ones that the fences were so far away. And I know a lot of people were saying, well, you should build your team to how your stadium is designed.
Right.
Forgetting to say that, they play 81 games on the road in much smaller stadiums, and you have to have a team. The Tigers, I can understand why, because you can go back to Juan Gonzalez, who hated the stadium. Yeah. Look at Nick Castellanos. He despised Comerica Park. Yeah. For its wide open, just how big as they call it, Comerica National Park. So I'm one of those people. It's like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. If they think that bringing in the center field fence, or maybe making the power alleys a little bit closer is a good thing, I have no problem with it. It's not like these things are set in stone, Greg. It's not like, they built it, now they can't change the damn thing. I just, if they think it'll give you a home field advantage or help the offense or whatever, do it. It's not that big of a deal, personally.
I have mixed feelings about this because I don't remember this being an issue when the Tigers were winning. I don't remember anybody saying, gosh, let's bring in the fences when the Tigers were winning. I mean, when they were a success.
Other than Lynn Henning.
Well, hey, if you bring in the fences, you're bringing them in for the other team too. It's not like these are retractable fences that they come in for the Tigers and go back out for the other team.
Yeah.
Both teams play with the same fences. So, I mean, you can flip it around and say, well, the park is pitcher friendly. But really, I mean, Curtis Granderson, I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it was 2007. Hit like 25.
So that is 2020 season.
Yeah, like 24 or 25 triples.
He had 20 homers, 20 doubles, 20 triples.
Yeah.
He had a ridiculous year.
Yeah, and he did it by hitting the ball into those gaps, those alleys you're talking about. Now the original Comerica Park, you mentioned Juan Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Gonzalez was here in the park's first year in 2000, and those fences were punitive. I mean,
you had that huge right center fence, and it was almost 400 feet away. It was bonkers.
It was punitive.
Yeah.
So I understand. So I think 3 or 4 years later, I think, is when they brought the fences.
Yeah, that's when they moved the bullpen to left field.
Mike Ilitch said, no, this is too much, so they brought it in.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing is that the stadium, for the most part, has played what they say neutral. It's been fair to both sides for the most part.
Yeah, right.
So, but it's, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. I think the stadium for the most part is fine if you have a good team.
Right.
And you have a couple guys at the it never bothered Miguel Cabrera, never really bothered Victor Martinez.
Right.
Didn't bother Maglio Ordonez that much,
Right.
So, if the Tigers want to do it, I'm not going to make this my hill to die on. But I can understand where you feel that, this could come back to bite them if they're too aggressive with it.
Let's look at, you mentioned Castellanos. Okay. Now, but let's talk about Robbie Grossman. Now, Robbie Grossman last year, now granted, he may have overperformed. I understand that. Yeah. But I don't recall Robbie Grossman one time last year complaining about the ballpark.
No.
Now, this year, before they traded him, that's all he did was complain about the ballpark because he was having a bad year. So it's like, I wonder how much is the ballpark is an easy thing to blame. It can't talk back. It can't argue for itself. It's easy to blame the ballpark when you're not going good. But to me, it's disingenuous to have a good year and not say anything about the ballpark, and have a bad year and complain about the ballpark. So but I'm like you. I'm not the hill I'm going to die on either. I mean, if they bring it in, fine. If they don't bring it in, fine. All I know is if you're a good team, it doesn't matter where you play. You're going to win because you're going to have good pitching, good defense, and you're going to have time hitting no matter or not. I know it gets people. For example, Riley. I think it was Green the other day. I think it might have been the last out of the game. Hit a ball that probably would have been out in a lot of other ballparks, but so what? I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, nobody talks about the fly balls that he may have hit at Yankee Stadium, which is like playing in a Little League ballpark, that would never have gone out in any other ballpark. So to me, it works both ways. Like you mentioned, the 81 games on the road, it all works. It just to me, it's not where the problem lies. Now, it's not going to harm anything to bring the fences in. Of course, it's not like it's not going to affect anybody's job. It's not going to affect really anything, frankly. I mean, you can bring them in and not really have any impact on how you operate your business. But I just don't know that necessarily that has anything to do with what's been going on here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's just an interesting thing we may see happen this offseason. It's something we'll definitely keep an eye on. All right. Before we resume our discussion of 70s miniseries, what was better, Salem's Lot, Roots, or Sybil? How's that for some deep cuts? We need to talk about the Lions. All right. Actually, we have not really had much chance to talk about these guys since we've been off. So we've only talked once since the season. Before the last time we talked, the season hadn't even started. We were still talking about Hard Knocks, and here we are, 2 games into the year, and the Lions have started their season at home. They split the 2 games. They kicked off the season falling behind 21-7 to the Eagles. They ultimately fell behind 31-14, and a late comeback did fall short. They lost 38-35 to the very impressive-looking, now 2-0 Eagles, because they kicked the Vikings' ass last night. Lions then evened their record at 500. They knocked off the Commanders 36-27. They looked quite dominant in taking a 22-0 lead. Now, honestly, they left points on the board. They should have probably closer to 30-0 in that game. And this is also why they are missing the entire interior of their offensive line. Their center and Ragnow and their two guards, Jackson and Vitae, and all playing with substitutes. And they managed to hold on. Obviously, the Commanders came back, and ultimately, goddamn, I forgot. What was the score of that game? I forgot to put it down. They ended up winning by like 9-10 points.
Yeah,
well,
36-27.
Yeah, exactly. And they've scored like 71 points, which is one of the top offenses in the NFL at this point. They won by 9-10 points, and honestly, the game really wasn't even that close. The Lions pretty much did what they needed to do against the Commanders. This week, they finally hit the road. They're going to take on the also 1-1 Vikings. The entire division is 1-1. And as I mentioned, they had their doors blown off by the Eagles. And it looks like the NFC North, Greg, is wide open. All four teams all look quite flawed. All four teams have their strengths, and they're all 1-1. And it's interesting to see what's going to happen. But what's your thoughts so far on Motor City Dan Campbell and his Detroit Lions, who have, for the most part, done okay? I'll put it that way. They've looked decent, which is actually an upgrade over the past couple seasons.
Yeah, right. The Commanders stink. Let's face it. They're not a very good team. I wouldn't put a lot of stock into beating them.
Yeah, when Carson Wentz is a worse Jared Goff. That way.
You know what? I was looking at. It's so funny when you go on different teams' Twitters. They're all the same. Every 32 teams' fan bases are the same. They're exactly the same. Mm-hmm. And so when I went on the Redskins, listen to me, the Commanders Twitter. When I went on the Commanders Twitter, everybody wants Ron Rivera fired. They want Jack Del Rio fired. They want everybody. They hate Dan Snyder. On and on.
Well, that's a given. Everybody in the world should hate Dan Snyder.
Right. So. But even though most of the, like I say, even though a lot of these teams' Twitters are very similar, it does give you, though, a little bit of an insight as to what the fans of those teams are complaining about. Now, in the Commanders' case, they're upset at Del Rio for the defense, and they don't like Rivera's decision-making, i.e. that inexplicably going for two at that one point. I don't know what he was thinking. There was 29-21. And he went for two. I don't know why he did that.
Yep.
That was weird. And even the announcers didn't understand that. But every team's got its own thing that they don't like about their coach and their coordinators, and it just runs.
Yeah.
Every team has it. So that's the Commanders are the Commanders. They're probably going to win 6-7 games tops at best. The Eagles are indeed good. There's no question about that. They're a good team, and I knew that when they were going to face a team that had a mobile quarterback like Hurts, that was going to prove to be disastrous, and it was, because they don't have any speed or big-time playmaking at the linebacker position or the edge, and so there you have it. And Hutchinson was his first game, and he over-pursued on several occasions, and that was his welcome to the NFL game.
Yep.
And so but as far as the team itself goes, I'm still not sold on the defense. I'm still not sold on Goff. I still think that Goff makes too many poor throws. Now, he does get hurt by his receivers drop a lot of passes. That's one thing that I did notice is the receivers in the first two games, I bet you dropped 10 passes in the first two games. So he butterfinger receivers. Too much emphasis on St. Brown as far as I'm concerned. There's not enough getting Reynolds involved and Chark involved. They brought these guys in, and of course they drafted Jameson Williams, who's out for a while, but they brought Chark in and last year they brought Reynolds in. And for a while, he and Reynolds had a little thing going. Yeah. And I don't too much emphasis on trying to force the ball to Hawkinson and too much getting the ball to St. Brown. I know they love St. Brown because he can do a lot of different things, but he's, to me, he's just a glorified Golden Tate. You need to have that stretch guy on the outside that can be a big.
Well, that guy is still on the IL right now. And that's the guy you want.
I don't know that if Al has the. He never hits a deep ball. Never. He never hits a deep ball. He never ever hits a guy deep. May hit a 30-yard pass, but that's it. He doesn't have big play ability. He doesn't have the accuracy. The defense, to me, it's still the defense. It's all about the defense. They took their foot off the pedal against the Commanders, as I knew they would. When it was 22-0, as usual, they let them right back in the ball game. And thanks to Rivera, though, who made a ridiculous decision to go for two, that kind of, the Commanders couldn't stop the Lions, of course, which was their problem. I don't know. This to me is still a 4-win team. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I just don't know that you can win more than 4 games with that defense. They didn't. I mean, you saw it against Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. It was a good team. And when they play the good teams, they're going to lose.
Well, I'll put it this way: is that I think the capability is there that they're going to win some shootouts, or at least they have the capability to win some shootouts. I mean, if you look right now, obviously this is all small sample size stuff right now, but they lead the NFL in offensive points scored, and they're second in overall points. Obviously, because I think it was. I forgot what team it was, but they have some defensive touchdowns, which is why they have a high. Why the Lions are only second overall, but they're second in offensive points, and it feels like they haven't played that well in offense for long stretches, which is saying something. I mean, like, there was that period there in the Eagles game where it kind of got out of control, where for like most of the second and third quarters they were 3 and outs, and that put them in a really behind the 8 ball, and then they had to ask Goff to throw them out of it, and he's just not capable of doing it. And obviously we saw some of that in the victory, where Goff seems to make sometimes either the wrong decision or a poorly placed throw that tends to shoot the Lions in the foot. We saw that a few times when they went forward and 4th and goal against the against the Commanders. And a well-thrown ball is a touchdown. And obviously, ultimately, it ended up working out because the Lions got a safety, then they scored on the next possession. But they should have scored right there. If Goff throws a ball where it's supposed to be right on the guy's numbers, it's a touchdown on 4th down. Unfortunately, the guy had to reach for it. He got hit, ball got loose. I just see too much. For a lot of people are getting on the Goff bandwagon, and I'm kind of with you in that he doesn't seem to be able to make all the throws you want a starting quarterback in the NFL to make. He tends to miss a little too often. We're not seeing the stupid mistakes that we saw last year. When he was throwing the ball away on 4th down, that kind of thing. But he still seems to check down a little too much. And what's funny, you mentioned that that they're not throwing deep. They're getting a lot of yards after catch right now because the Lions have 11 plays of 20-plus yards or more. But obviously some of those are runs from DeAndre Swift. One of those is a run from the Sun God, Amon-Ra. There's a lot of it is short stuff that has gone long. He's not, as you said, he's not one to hit the 60-yard bomb like we would see under Matthew Stafford. And I think that's once he gets Williams, who hopefully will be with the Lions by the middle of the year, hopefully sooner, because they just released video of him working out, cutting. If he can't, that's a guy you were just describing. You want that guy on the outside who can burn by everybody, get past everybody, and catch the deep ball. And if Goff can't make Williams a weapon, that's the red flag saying we need to move on from Goff. If you haven't seen that red flag already, I do have questions about him. He's playing okay right now, but is Jared Goff the guy you want in a playoff game having to make a big play? Right, as seeing some of the mistakes he's making right now, that answer is no. And right now they seem to be living off of big plays by yards after catch and scheming guys open. That's what's happened with like the 50-plus yard run from with St. Brown on Sunday. That was a scheme play where they put guys in motion several times, and then suddenly they caught it. When they got the Commanders used to it, then they went with the end around on that misdirection, and Ra was off to the races. And I found it funny when he said, "I knew the play was going to work when I heard defenders say, 'oh, shit.'"
Right.
And as a former defensive lineman, I can vouch for you. I have said, "Oh shit," as I fell for misdirection a few times. So,
right.
But for some of these big plays though have been more on the receiver and on the running back than Jared Goff. So the jury is, even though he's putting up decent numbers right now, I'm with you. The jury is still out on Goff, and the Lions are going to have a decision to make. At the end of this year, say Goff takes them to 7 wins. Is that enough for them to keep him at $30 million plus a year for the next 2 years?
Yeah, but
or you walk away from him and you pay him $10 million and you try to find yourself another quarterback. And it's being proven in the NFL, Greg. If you want a quarterback, you can get one. You just have to give up some high draft picks or willing to pay a lot of money.
Okay, when is now? By the way, to that point, there was an interesting stat that I did not realize about Wentz. This is the third year in a row that he has started an opening game for a different team.
Different team, yeah. What would have been Philly, then Indy, and now the Commanders.
Which is really they said it's rarely ever been done. But anyway, when are the Lions going to draft a quarterback?
What, you mean one that's not taken in the 6th round?
I mean, period. When are they going to draft a quarterback? They haven't drafted a quarterback, and I don't even know when the last time they drafted.
God, it would have been Jake Rudock, and that was like 5 years ago.
At least.
And that was in like the 6th round.
But I mean,
when's the last time they took a quarterback in the 1st or 2nd day? Probably you'd have to go back to Stafford, and that's now 13 years ago.
So you mentioned, you buy him out and you walk away and you find a quarterback. Well, they haven't drafted a quarterback. And the guys that they bring, these backups that they bring in.
Yeah, who's the guy now? Nate Sudfeld?
Yeah.
I had to look him up. Who the hell is Nate Sudfeld?
Now I know that backup quarterbacks are backups for a reason, and I've compared backup quarterback position to vice president of the United States in the sense that it's a do-nothing job for the most part. Yeah. But you're just a whisker away from being the person. And, in the NFL, if the starter goes down, all of a sudden you're thrust into the limelight. And don't get me wrong. I know backup quarterbacks are backup quarterbacks. I understand that. But the Lions have had even among backup quarterbacks, have had the worst of that group I just don't know when they're going to get serious about drafting. I mean, even if they decide that they're going to stick with Goff for another couple of years, whatever the case may be, sooner or later you got to draft a quarterback. Sooner or later you have to have a guy that you develop and you draft with the idea of not just being training camp fodder, but somebody whose youth you could see being to run your football team down the line. That's what all the good. You look at around the league, Al. Now, Aaron Rodgers is an exception, and Tom Brady. Those guys played for a million years. But you look around the NFL, teams that are able to be good year after year after year always seem to have a quarterback at the ready. Like if one guy leaves or gets hurt, they always seem to bring. When Roethlisberger, for example, would go down in Pittsburgh toward the end of his career when he was breaking down. Mm-hmm. The Steelers always had somebody that could come in and respectably be a quarterback. The Lions had these bozos that they put in, Blau and who's the other idiot? Boyle. Who they re-signed again. He's on the practice squad. Yeah, these guys are awful, just awful. And
you remember Dave Craig when he was the Lions backup? He saved their season when Mitchell got hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He saved the season.
And for all the fun we've made of the Lions in the past, in terms of gosh, they've never had, they've always had these quarterback battles. Munson and Landry, Plum and Sweetan, Morrill and Plum. Kramer and Ware and Pete and you name it. Go on and on. Danielson and Hipple. You keep going. Yep. Okay, that's fine. We can make fun of that. That's true. Yeah. But you really, when you think about it, at least they had. It meant that two
NFL caliber quarterbacks. Yeah.
Right. And so I would actually, we make fun of that because nobody could decide who was the best of those guys. And none of those players that I mentioned were Pro Bowl caliber. I understand that. But they were, respectable NFL quarterbacks.
And most of them had very long NFL careers.
Right.
Either as a starter and or backup.
Right.
Yeah.
So now you look at I just wonder when the Lions will ever decide that they're going to, well, you know what, we better draft a quarterback here sooner or later, because I know Goff's not old. I understand that. And I know that he's expensive to keep around. True. But if you choose not to, what do you do?
Yeah.
Right now, what would you do? I mean, they almost have to stick with Goff. I don't know if there's any real option. I know last year was an outlier. Quarterbacks were flying around, changing teams like I've never seen before, and probably won't ever see again. I mean, that was you needed an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of who was quarterbacking. I understand that.
Yeah.
But this is not. That's an outlier. That's not going to happen all the time. When you guys got guys like Matt Ryan moving around and stuff, I mean, that's
Russell Wilson got traded for Christ's sake.
It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Now, unless you want to say, well, maybe this is a new trend. Maybe we'll
that's a possibility.
Start to say this.
Yeah, it is a possibility that maybe teams are willing to blow things up a little earlier than they were before. Because years ago, Russell Wilson would have finished his career with Seattle, for example. Then again, it also plays into the guys. Apparently, Wilson wanted out, just like Stafford wanted out.
Right.
So, that's also a possibility. But the thing is, though, these guys, for the most part, also kind of get to choose where they get to go.
Right.
And how many of these guys are going to choose Detroit? So that's the question right there. But Goff, I think, no matter how the season plays out, it's still. It ultimately is going to rest on the shoulders of your quarterback, and Goff still has a lot of question marks. He's yet to ever play like the quarterback that played in the Super Bowl, 4 or 5 years ago at this point, and I wonder if he'll ever be that quarterback again.
Well, here's the other thing, too. Okay, well, here's the other thing. Okay, if you don't want to, okay, now I get that there's only a handful of quarterbacks that are really elite, they're at that upper tier. Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers, and a couple other guys.
And honestly, you could argue that Brady and Rodgers are starting to fall.
Yeah, that's true.
Too.
No,
but yeah, there are a handful of guys, and there looks like there's some guys that might be stepping up, like Jalen Hurts, for example, who's been a monster in 2 games so far.
But and Stafford took some heat here because he wasn't able to win the big one or win anything, frankly, when he was here. But if you're talking about Goff and you say, well, he hasn't been able to play at a certain level, and there are so few guys that can play at that level anyway, so you may as well be good, really good in other areas of your football team. Have a good defense, have a good running game, excel at special teams.
The Niners have kind of proved that by winning with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Right. I mean, because they got guys like Bosa and so forth on defense. And so if you're not going to, you can't. I know what you're saying about, well.
And speaking of Garoppolo, how you were talking about if you're having a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Trey Lance broke his ankle. Guess who steps in? The guy who took you to the championship game last year in Garoppolo.
Right.
It's. We could go on for hours about the quarterback situation, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that then be really good somewhere else.
Yeah.
Be really, really good at other aspects.
And it looks like the Lions might be starting to do that, at least in a couple position units, specifically the offensive line, maybe wide receiver, maybe running back. But as you said, it really comes down to the defense. And they have some guys who could develop into that, but they don't have units that are dependable yet, specifically linebacker and probably the defensive backfield. The defensive line looks like it might be pretty good. But you're right, that linebackers are shaky, defensive backs, there's a lot of question marks. And if you don't, as you said, if you don't have that elite quarterback who can will you to wins, you have to be elite everywhere else or close to it. And that's a really, really, really hard thing to do. And you're right about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but it just seems to me.
What? I've been talking to you for 13 years. You've had answers. You've been lying to me.
Well, as far as the offensive line goes, they're always hurt. They're always hurt. Everybody's hurt. At least they never have the 5 starters together. Never.
Yeah.
Everybody's hurt. Ragnall's hurt again. Vitae's hurt. Now, I know Skipper came in and played well, and I know that they like Evan Brown, and, I will grant you that if there's any place where they have depth.
They got depth as offensive line.
That's true. I will grant that.
Yeah.
Grant you that. But unfortunately, their starters never play together as a unit. Never.
No, never all last year either. Yeah.
So that's a concern. You can't just keep relying on backups at positions. But you know what? To me, it's still the defense. The defense is got to be Brad Holmes's focus for the next couple of years.
Quarterback.
Well, yeah, right. I mean,
But then again, now that we have to say that means that's how this team is still not close to being a true contender. When you put it that way, they may need a quarterback. They need some more impact players on defense. At the very least, though, Greg, it looks like how we've complained about this team has rarely found starters in the lower rounds like some other teams.
Yeah.
Looks like they found one at linebacker in Rodriguez, for example. I mean, the guy's getting good reviews from places like Pro Football Focus, for example. Unfortunately, he's stuck playing next to Alex Anzalone, who is not a starting linebacker in this league, or shouldn't be. But they're starting to find some guys, Greg. It's just that they're still not there yet. I'm with you on that.
They don't have this. They don't have speed. How long we talk about that? They don't have speed. They don't have playmakers. Let's face it. I mean, I know Hutchinson had a big game. He had a big half. Hutchinson
has the potential to be one, but again, it's only been 2 games.
Yeah,
And
if you start double teaming him, their defensive line is okay. It's okay.
I would say good. I personally, but
it's all right. But their linebacking core and their secondary leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, and then watching some of that game last night, watching Darius Slay dominate. And that guy should still be with the Lions. Unfortunately, Matt Patricia.
Yeah, Diggs.
Oh, my God, thinking back. And still, what infuriates me the most about Darius Slay leaving is how the fan base bought into Matt Patricia's narrative of he's a locker room cancer. And a lot of the fan base of this town bought it. And now they're all eating crow as to it wasn't Slay. Slay was right the entire time. It was Patricia who was the locker room cancer. Because I'm sure we could go back and look 2 years ago on social media and seeing Lions fans parrot the Quintricia. Well, we had to get rid of Diggs and Slay because they were out of control in the locker room and there was cliques and blah blah blah. And then it started coming out what an asshole Patricia was with that. Where he started insulting Slay because he worked out with elite players like OBJ in the offseason, and he called him a dick rider. Well, that right there, Matt Patricia, the fact that he is still working in the NFL is just mind-boggling to me. I don't know what the hell Bill Belichick sees in that guy, but 2.5 years in Detroit proved that Matt Patricia was an emperor of no clothes. Literally.
Yeah, no. The thing about here's when you got a guy like Slay. Now Slay was, and you mentioned people buying into he's a cancer thing, and I think part of why they bought into that was that
he's outspoken.
Right. He's outlandish. He talks a lot. Frankly, he talked to me a little bit too much for a guy who hadn't really done much. Yeah. But he was. No, there's no question the guy ended up being a pretty good football player. No question.
Yeah.
But he was, loudmouth and so it's easy to paint. It's easy for a coach to say, especially a new coach who we don't know much about, comes from New England, and then the new guy comes in and says, "Well, this guy he's a cancer," and whatever. And so the guy comes from New England and he must be right. And Slay's a big talker and he yaps a lot. So maybe there is something to that. And he also drove Diggs out of town.
Yep.
Diggs was.
And what's funny, Greg, is that we on this podcast, when the revelations came out about Patricia getting indicted on a rape charge,
right?
Back then, we both said they shouldn't have hired him. They should have just fired him on the spot.
That was your red flag there, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're both on record saying once that came out, the Lions should have said, you're gone. We'll pay you off, but you're gone.
The Patriots Twitter I was talking earlier about every team has its thing to grind, axe to grind. Their axe to grind is Patricia. They don't like him either in New England. They
especially he's running the offense.
Yeah, they do not. They have no. There's no love lost there. Whatever goodwill Patricia had as the defensive coordinator some 5 years ago is completely gone.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, what does Belichick see in him? I don't know. I don't know. But they don't like him.
Yeah, would you want your rookie quarterback, now it's second-year quarterback, Mac Jones, who has potential, being led by Matt Patricia? After seeing what he did here in Detroit? That's mine. I don't like Boston fans, but I can feel for him right now with that Patricia stuff. I really can.
But it makes you wonder, though, Al, why Matt Stafford didn't give the Dan Campbell thing a try. Why? Because they got rid of Patricia during that 2020 season.
Yeah.
And yet Stafford wanted to go anyway. He didn't. So it makes.
If you ask me, he probably didn't think the Lions were going to make a good decision. Because how many coaches has he seen come through? Maybe he said, if I'm, it's like, shame on me. Get bit once, shame on me. Get bit like 6 times. Shame on this guy.
That's true. Yeah.
Shame on you.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's what he was probably thinking. And plus, he was sweet talked by Sean McVay. We all know that happened in the offseason.
Yeah.
So he had Sean McVay whispering sweet nothings in his ear on vacation, and I'm sure that was I'm sure that was the final selling point, because McVay does have that, I don't know, wholly deserved reputation as an offensive mastermind, but he was good enough to win him a Super Bowl. So, but you got a point there. I just think it was more. I think at that point with Stafford, it was Lions history of being unable to find that coach, that guy, that whoever it was to run the organization, and Stafford was just like, I'm done with it. Who knows? He also had a slightly batshit loudmouth wife who probably much prefers being on the West Coast, so that might have played into it too.
Right.
He's married to a Karen, as they say.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I hope that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes work out, because I am enjoying having a head coach I can actually root for, who seems very personable, who treats the media with respect, and who seems to have he seems to be the kind of the happy medium between you have Matt Patricia, the antagonistic Matt Patricia on one side, and then you have the stoic Jim Caldwell on the other side.
Yeah.
And maybe they finally found that sweet spot with a slightly manic Dan Campbell. I mean, I like what he said today. He said he scouted last night's game by drinking and getting drunk. So I'm sure he was joking.
Yeah.
But could you picture Matt Patricia joking about getting drunk while scouting a game? With Dan Campbell, everybody's laughing.
Yeah.
And with Matt Patricia, everybody would have taken it seriously.
Remember when Matt Patricia, I think this is his first year here. Remember when he got on that reporter's case for slouching or something in a press conference?
Yeah, it was Rothstein of ESPN. Yep.
Remember that?
Yep, I sure do. And then could you picture when Colton Pouncey, who's now the beat writer for The Athletic, at his first press conference with Dan Campbell, his first press conference working as a Lions beat writer, and his phone alarm went off, and Campbell joked about it. Matt Patricia probably would have lost his freaking mind. It's I'll just say Dan Campbell is at least someone I can root for. I don't think I feel bad about doing so. I mean, for all the issues the NFL seems to have, at the very least, Dan Campbell at least he comes across as one of the more authentic guys out there right now when it comes to head coaches. He really feels authentic, wears his heart on his sleeve, and you got to wonder how long that will last, because that is that's kind of a Dick Vermeil type of a guy, where the emotions, I think, with Dick Vermeil finally caught up with him. He just couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
That would be my fear of a guy like Campbell. He is so open and emotional and fired up all the time. You got to wonder how long can he keep it up. it seems like that's got to take a toll on you, being that on, that up, that, just being that guy all the damn time. And he's been that guy for 2 years now, and the cameras have been on him the entire time, especially with Hard Knocks. It's, who knows if Campbell's going to work out. At the very least, he is someone I think I could root for. And there's been a lot of Lions coaches where I couldn't say that.
Yeah, no, I will grant you that. And it doesn't hurt his status here to be following a guy like Patricia, who became so hated here, and Bob Quinn together became so hated. I mean, that's the act you want to follow, is a guy like that. And same with Holmes. He's following Quinn, so those are the kind of guys you want to follow.
Exactly. Because, you want to be the guy who takes after, who follows the other guy. It would have been a lot tougher if Campbell comes in after Jim Caldwell.
And you mentioned Caldwell, and he was a gentleman. There's no question about it. He was a
decorum, please.
Yeah,
decorum.
He was old school in the sense that he was old, but he was also old school in the sense of the way the way he conducted himself, and there was never any, you may have disagreed with his in-game decisions. You may have disagreed. Yeah. You may even have agreed that he should have been fired, as I was in agreement. Yeah. But you couldn't say that he was a jerk. You couldn't say that he was an asshole. You couldn't say that he.
Yeah, from all accounts, he was a nice guy.
He never threw his players under the bus. Never. There was never, that I can recall, there was never any issues with any players when he was here.
Yep. The players would have ran through a wall for the guy. So, really would have.
There is something to be said for that kind of a legacy. Now, he may not have won big here, Caldwell, but he did leave with the winning record, and that's you can't say that about
he left with the team in better shape than when he arrived.
Yeah, so I mean,
which is why everybody thought, Patricia will take it the next step, but they just destroyed the whole goddamn thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, my God. Oh, God. The Lions are just like the bane of our existence, Greg. I'm telling you. But at least we'll have something to talk about. So at the very least, we may not totally be in agreement about where we see this team going. I think they're a little better than you think they're a little worse. I think they're a little better. We'll see how that all plays out.
Right.
At the very least, though, they're interesting again. And after a couple years of essentially spinning their wheels as a 2-3 win team. So at least Sundays are a little more interesting now. I can appreciate that. All right, let's get the hell out of here. Before we do that, who is your jerk of the week? You got about a month's worth of stuff here to pick from.
I do.
Who are you picking? Yeah.
But memories are always so short when it comes to this kind of thing. I don't like to make 18-year-old kids jerks of the week, but I will make I will make an exception here. Imani Bates. I'm not sure if you know who this gentleman is.
Yes, I do.
He was a much sought-after basketball prospect out of Ypsilanti, Michigan, and he ended up going to Memphis and kind of flaming out in Memphis, and transferred to Eastern Michigan, which everybody was excited about. Our friend Stan Heath, who we've had on the program, was very everybody was really glad that Imani decided to come back home, play at Eastern. There were some folks who observed college basketball who kind of wondered about that and were kind of, I wonder what's going on there. Yeah. And lo and behold, either yesterday or it was either today or within the last couple of days, he got caught driving with a gun in the passenger seat of this vehicle. Now, he's been arrested on weapons charges.
Yeah, felony
charges. He's been, of course, suspended by the team. And pending, of course, I'm sure all the legal things that's going to happen. So now this 18-year-old, he's 18 years old, comes back home and is going to, play for Eastern and give that program a jolt. And Eastern considered it a coup to get him, and so forth. And now his, future is murky at to say the least. And I could end up being the jerk here, because maybe down the line it's gonna come out that there was the circumstances we have to let it all come out, and once it all comes out, we'll realize that, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as we think. But for right now, he's in deep doo-doo with the law, and so
Yep.
I don't know what's going to happen with his basketball career. I hope he's not one of these guys that always has run-ins and so forth. So he had some issues in Memphis, not legal issues necessarily, but issues with the program and
personality issues. Yeah.
And so I just it's disappointing to say the least. I was really disheartened. Everybody in the Eastern family was so happy about that win in Arizona State, and then that this news about Bates was just so sobering. And I just hope that more for his sake than the school, of course, that this isn't maybe as bad as we think it is. Maybe
that's what his lawyer, I believe, said. It's not what it looks like, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah,
so.
But these are serious charges. It's not DUI or something. These are serious charges. So we'll see. But I make him jerk of the week because I just feel like he's throwing it all away, and I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, this guy was on the cover. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, if I remember right. Yeah. It's like the next LeBron James, and he's tracking to be I'll be on the cover of Federal Prison magazine. Right. That's felony weapons charges are that's scary shit. Mm-hmm. So that's something. That really is something, Greg. How you went from the highs of what happened Saturday night to this news that broke this morning, because things really have been looking up for Eastern athletics. Yeah. And so I'm with you. I think what it is, this is a kid who's had all the advantages in the world, and he's not taking, and he's well on his way to screwing them up royally, and I think that's what makes you angry.
Right.
There's someone who has all the talent in the world and all the support in the world, supposedly, and he still is screwing it up royally. So I'm with you there. So hey. We're open to calling 18-year-olds the jerk of the week if they deserve it. And I think felony weapons charges deserves it. So, all right. My jerk of the week, I was thinking like Kyrie Irving, who has been saying absolutely boneheaded, conspiracy-laden bullshit for the past month, between, talking about the New World Order and vaccines and flat earths. The guy is... I would hate to be a Nets fan right now. I'll just put it that way. I've thought about him. But I'm keeping it a little more personal because, as we mentioned earlier in the show, I was in Florida visiting my 82-year-old father and a 75-year-old stepmom. And one of the reasons I was down there, I was last there about 3 months ago. And when we were down there last time, my dad said, when you come back, I want to cut the cord. I'm paying too much for my cable, and he really is. And so, but... the one caveat is he's a huge Tampa Bay Rays fan. He never misses a Rays game. And as we've talked about on the show before about Sinclair and the Bally Sports and how awful it is that there's very few ways to watch them, to watch the Bally Sports channels if you don't have cable. It's either you pay essentially cable prices for DirecTV Stream, which is the only streaming service which carries the Bally Sports network, Bally Sports Detroit, Bally Sports, Mike Adamski's Bally Sports Sun, I believe, or is it Florida? One of the two. And so I'm doing the research, and I'm like, Dad, maybe you better hold on to the cable box till the season ends, and once playoffs start, then we can get rid of the cable boxes. All the Rays games will either be on like ESPN or Fox or whatever. You'll be able to watch them whenever. But he wants to reduce his bill, and I said, okay, Dad, there is Bally Sports Plus. You can pay for it. It's $20 a month, but we'll just keep it for the month, and then we can cancel, and you can watch the Rays till then. And so we take our cable box back, and so we set them up with YouTube TV. YouTube TV is awesome, works great, but it doesn't have the regional sports networks, which is why we have to get Bally Sports Plus. Strike number one: the most used smart TV platform or smart platform out there for streaming is a Roku. I'm sure you got a Roku. Yeah. I got like 5 Rokus. Yeah. You know what Bally Sports doesn't work on?
Roku.
A Roku. And my dad, the other thing we did down there, he bought a brand new 68-inch TV. That was his. He wanted a big, big TV. Mm-hmm. He's been working on my stepmom for months to get it. He knew I was coming down. He goes, Al, let's get that TV. So I got on that 68-inch smart Roku TV, beautiful television. I installed Bally Sports on it. You need to register with your TV provider to be able to watch the game. Obviously, okay, that's out the window. Okay. Try to use a Fire Stick. First off, I have to activate signing up for Bally Sports. Then I have to activate that I have Bally Sports Plus. And you know, it's like trying to get this stuff done with an 82-year-old man who doesn't have a smartphone.
Right.
You know, and my stepmom, sweet as she is, she has no clue. She has a smartphone and really doesn't know how to use the capabilities of it. It was awful. So you know what we ultimately ended up doing for him? He takes his laptop, signs into Bally Sports Plus on his laptop, and then plugs it into, as my dad calls it, the HDM1 port. It's not HDMI, it's the HDM1 port.
That's funny.
But the problem is, it shouldn't be this difficult for someone who desperately wants to watch your game.
Right.
You shouldn't have to jump through this many hoops to be able to watch sports. Right. If there is a worse company in the world than Sinclair, well, they're high on the list, I'll say this. And just the grief it took to finally get my dad to be able to watch a goddamn Rays game, it should not be that difficult, and Bally Sports has made it next to impossible to watch. Excuse me.
No kidding.
Pardon me. I'm sitting there sneezing and muting. I was sneezing. See, this rant has got me sneezing. But Bally Sports and Sinclair has made it so difficult just to watch a goddamn baseball game if you don't have cable. And so that's my jerk of the week. If people want to be able to watch a baseball game, at the very least, put it on every goddamn platform and then make it easy to use. And Bally Sports is not. So they're my jerk of the week. Bally Sports and Sinclair are just awful, 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 awful. And next time I go down, I already told my dad I'll handle it all from up here. I will cancel at the end of the season, so on and so forth. But oh my God, Greg.
Yeah, that's rough. Oh, that's definitely rough for sure.
Yeah, Bally Sports and Sinclair can die in a fire for all I care. and the Tigers just signed a goddamn 5-year contract with them, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right, with that, now they got that rant off, and I'm done sneezing and all stuffed up now. Why don't you get out the thank yous and plugs and all that fun stuff?
Well, because I forgot to mention at the top of the show, you can read me in my WordPress Out of Bounds blog every Monday. Catch my latest piece about Eastern's win over Arizona State and the subsequent firing of Herm Edwards. Check me out there. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Big time thank you to Dave Mesrey for showing up and talking about Hamtramck and about the Ike Blessitt Baseball Classic, which is coming up on October 2nd. Al will put the links that you need in the show notes to find out where to get tickets and where to go to watch that, or even play in that if you want to. They're still taking registrations for people who want to play, so do that as well. Not sure who we'll have on the show October 4th, but I do know on October 18th, which is the opening night of the NBA season.
Good Lord.
We will have City Hall on. City and I talked about this a week or so ago. We said, when is the opening night? And we looked at it was October 18th. Well, that happens to be a Knee Jerks night. So we'll have City on. By that time, the Pistons roster will be all set, and of course, everything. Yep. So we'll talk about the Pistons on the 18th. Not sure who we'll have on the 4th. We'll keep you posted on that. Want to thank my lovely wife Sharon, of course, for putting up with this nonsense. And good to see you, Al, again.
Yep.
And thanks for making Tuesday night so gosh darn fun.
Yes, thank you, Greg, for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you got a lot on your plate to sit here and talk sports for 2 hours. And how's Bean? I didn't even hear him bark tonight.
Yeah, well, I got the door closed. That's why I didn't.
Oh, poor Bean! He's probably right in front of the door. Where's Dad? Oh, okay. Anyway, but like I said, now we got off another tangent. Okay, if you want to listen to the show, It's going to be found in all the usual places. Any place podcasts are found, you can find a Knee Jerks. Just do a search for the Knee Jerks. Do a search for Eno and Big Al or some combination of the two. We're available in places like Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Deezer, Radio Public. TheKneeJerks.net is the homepage. That's where you will find all of the links that we talked about, like the links for Dave's events and where you want to buy tickets for the Ike Blessitt event, things like that. Also have a link to Greg's blog. Also, that's where you can directly download the MP3. You can play it on any device you like rather than having to deal with a podcast aggregator. With that, I guess Greg will surprise us both in 2 weeks if we have guests. We'll have lots of football to talk about, and we'll be on, I believe, on the cusp of the baseball playoffs being ready to start. So, and we'll obviously have training camp for the Red Wings and the Pistons. So we'll have lots going on. So until that time, as fall will be upon us the next time we talk, this will be. This is not will be. I hope I'm still. And I'll see you next time. Good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks.